Hello all. In this session we will discuss that how we can use the information, the probabilistic information coming from the hazard curve of a particular site and use that in the earthquake resistant design of buildings or for any other applications, for example the performance assessment of existing buildings. So let's start. So let's see that in last session we have seen an example where we actually understood that each point on the y-axis of this hazard curve for a particular site is corresponding to a different rate of exceedance, which can basically be you can say considered or can be converted into a definition of seismic hazard. For example, we have seen that this 0.002 actually translated into 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years. Similarly, if we have another number, it will be translated for the same 50 years, it will be translated into or converted into another number or another percentage of exceedance in the same 50 years. So these three are the three different forms of the hazard curve. We can have the annual rate of exceedance on y-axis. We can also have the rate of exceedance in certain years on y-axis, and we can also just simply convert it or consider it as the probability of exceedance in a certain number of years. So point 1 simply means 10% probability of exceedance in next 50 years. So now it's our choice that we can use this definition 10% in 50 years and come up with this number, or we use another definition, let's say 2% in 50 years, and design our structure on a higher number. So now it's not a one fixed PGA. Depending upon our requirement, we can pick the PGA value from this curve and then can use for our purpose. So now here an important point is that these two numbers which I have just written, 10% in 50 years and 2% in 50 years, those are having a specific standard definition also, and that is used in the seismic design and performance assessment of buildings in different building codes also. So these two definitions, 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years and 2% in 50 years, these two have a very important definition, or they are used in different building codes. So you can kind of call them as the standard hazard levels or hazard definitions on which you have to perform different things or different analysis when you follow different building codes. For example, this 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years is called the design basis earthquake, DBE, design basis, the design basis earthquake. And this one, 2% probability of exceedance, is called the maximum considered earthquake, MCE, maximum considered earthquake. Obviously the PGA value corresponding to this MCE definition will be higher. Another possible representation of the hazard curve can be that you have the return period on y-axis and the peak ground acceleration on x-axis. In that case, obviously the curve will be just going up because the return period is the reciprocal of the annual rate of exceedance. So now we have two standard definitions on the y-axis, and they correspond to these 10% in 50 years and 2% in 50 years. If we convert these definitions into the return period by taking their reciprocal of the corresponding annual rate of exceedance, for DBE level we will get 475 years, and for MCE level we will get 2475 years. So approximately we can say that the DBE level is an earthquake which on average repeat itself in 500 years. So given a 500 period of time, a duration of time, it is expected that you will have this earthquake once in that time. But for MCE level, it is a more rare earthquake. It is a, you can say, a large magnitude earthquake with a return period of 2475 years. So you can say that on average it repeats itself in 2500 years. So if you are given with a time duration of 2500 years, it is expected that you get this earthquake once at your site. And obviously that the PGA values corresponding to these definitions are used in the seismic design and analysis. The magnitude is not used because the ground motion parameter is the PGA value which you are interested in at your site. So here you can see, for example, the results of the probabilistic seismic hazard analysis of Pakistan, and you can see here that this is the map corresponding to 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years, corresponding to 475-year return period. So all of the colors here at different locations, the legend is here, so you can see here the color is translated into the PGA value at that particular location. So keeping the same legend here, if I plot the values for 2% probability of exceedance in 50 years, corresponding to a return period of 2475 years, in that case I will get this map. The legend is same, so now you see that the values are high. You can see the orange and red colors are in the high PGA value ranges. So which means that depending upon the hazard value, each site in the particular study area will get its PGA value from the hazard curve. So you will have maybe hundreds of sites located in the study area. For each site, you will have a hazard curve, and from that hazard curve corresponding to one number, which is the 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years, you get the PGA value. For the same site, you change the definition, you get the 2% probability of exceedance in 50 years, a lower number, and get this higher PGA value for the same site. So you repeat the process for hundreds of sites in a study area and construct what we call as the hazard map, but that hazard map will be corresponding to a particular definition of hazard. So this is for DBE level, design basis earthquake level, and this is called the maximum considered earthquake level. I will explain these two terms again in next slide. The expected performance of buildings in different modern building codes or earthquake resistant design codes is as follows, that the structure is expected to resist a minor level of earthquake, which means there should be no damage corresponding to a minor level of an earthquake, and that minor level is defined as follows. It is also sometimes called as the serviceability earthquake or service level earthquake, SLE, and it is defined as an earthquake having a 50% probability of exceedance in 30 years. So now you have another earthquake definition, which is SLE level, having a 50% probability of exceedance in 30 years, which means that in next 30 years there is a 50% chance that this an earthquake having a magnitude more than this SLE level earthquake will occur. This corresponds to, because you can convert this some probability of exceedance in some years, you can always convert now into the return period, because you can calculate the annual exceedance rate, and that reciprocal of an annual exceedance rate will be the return period. So which means that this SLE level is a relatively frequent earthquake which on average repeat itself in 43 years of time. So it's a frequent earthquake, and the expectation from the structure is that at this frequent earthquake there should be no damage or minor level of damage. The second definition is the DBE level, as I have explained previously also. The expectation from the structure is that it should resist the design level of an earthquake, which is defined by the DBE level, with some damage, but there should be no loss of life. This is the expected performance of the structure at this DBE level, which is defined like this, that it should have a 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years, corresponding to 475-year return period. And at the same time, it is also expected from the structure that under the strongest earthquake, which is defined as the MCE level, it is allowed to have a significant damage, but it should not collapse. So it can be expected that there is an extreme damage in this case, that is allowed in this case, but it should remain standing, it should not collapse under this high level of an earthquake, which is defined as an earthquake having a 2% probability of exceedance in 50 years, corresponding to 2475 years return period. So which means that if I go back maybe here, so this 10% was dBE, and this 2% in the 50 years was MCE, and now we have SLE also, SLE, which corresponds to 50% probability of exceedance in 30 years. In 30 years. If you convert it into an equivalent probability of exceedance in 50 years, you will see that it will be somewhere here. Obviously, it will not be 50 years, it will not be 50% here, because this hazard curve is for 50 years already. But you know that you can convert it into an equivalent probability of exceedance in 50 years, corresponding to the same return period of 43 years, and you will see that it will lie somewhere on top, and it will have a even lower PGA compared to the dBE level. So the first level is SLE, the lowest level. The structure should remain intact, it should not have any damage, or maybe some minor damage, but maybe non-structural damage only. For dBE level, it can have structural damage, but it should not be so that there is some loss of life. And for MCE level, the expectation is that the structure should at least remain standing, it should not collapse. So in the probabilistic framework of structural analysis and design, we basically perform the analysis for these three levels and ensure that the structure perform as we have expected for each level of the hazard. For important structures and for other applications, or for the requirements of different stakeholders maybe, we can also have different other definitions of hazards also, other than these three standard 10% probability and 2% probability, etc. For example, let's take the case of the major dam projects. According to the International Commission of Large Dams, this document, Bulletin 72, the large dam have to be able to withstand the effect of MCE level shaking, maximum credible earthquake shaking level, and this MCE is the strongest earthquake shaking level that could occur in the region of a dam, and its definition is defined as an earthquake having a return period of several thousands of years, for example 10,000. So now you have a different definition of hazard, and not 475 years which is dBE level, and not 2475 years which is the MCE level for buildings. For dam structures, you may have to design your structure for a return period of maybe 10,000 of years, because it is an important structure, failure of which can cause a significant damage to the human society. If you convert that 10,000 years of return period, it will correspond to 0.5% probability of exceedance in 50 years. So very strict or very high definition of seismic hazard. That this means that in next 50 years there is only 0.5% chance that an earthquake having a PGA value or magnitude more than this MCE level will occur. 0.5%, very less. Now another important issue in this discussion is the ground motion parameter. Currently we were using the peak ground acceleration as the hazard parameter or ground motion parameter, and this has been widely used to quantify the ground motions in PSHA. PGA, peak ground acceleration, is a good index to hazards for low rise buildings, maybe up to 7 stories. But for higher stories, the peak ground acceleration may not be a suitable ground motion parameter. One option can be peak ground velocity. It is also a good index for taller buildings, but it is not clear how to relate velocity to force in order to design a taller building, because velocity cannot be converted into force. Nowadays, a preferred parameter is the response spectral acceleration, or simply spectral acceleration, SA. Nowadays, spectral acceleration is considered a more meaningful or more important parameter compared to PGA. While PGA is what is experienced by a particle on the ground or the shaking of the ground itself, on the other hand, spectral acceleration is approximately what is experienced by a building if it is modeled by a single degree of freedom system, which means a particle mass on a massless vertical rod having the same natural period as the building. So if we assume that our building is approximately modeled as a single degree of freedom system with whole of the mass lumped here, and this system will have the same time period, natural time period, as the time period of the building, the response acceleration to that particular single degree of freedom system against a particular ground motion, the response acceleration is called the spectral acceleration, the peak value of that response acceleration. So spectral acceleration is defined as the maximum acceleration experienced by a damped single degree of freedom system oscillator, which is crudely representing your building. So the peak value of the building response, you can say, the approximate peak value of the building response or building's acceleration response. So instead of now picking the maximum value of ground acceleration, we are picking the maximum value of structural acceleration, the response acceleration. So that will be your spectral acceleration. And the benefit of using that as the ground motion parameter is that we can simply multiply the spectral acceleration with building mass to calculate forces, because Newton's second law simply converts the acceleration into the forces which are experienced by the body. So the building mass can be multiplied by the spectral acceleration to calculate the maximum earthquake forces in a building. So therefore, the spectral acceleration is nowadays considered a more suitable ground motion parameter compared to the PGA value. So here you have the actual building response, and approximately it can be represented by this mass on a spring system, that if you have the same time period of this system, same as the actual time period of the building, then you can say that this can crudely represent the response of your structure. So the peak value of the acceleration against a particular earthquake, the peak value of response acceleration for this particular, you can say, single degree of freedom system or a crude representation of your building, the peak value here will be the spectral acceleration. The peak value of the ground motion itself will be PGA. So now we shift from PGA to spectral acceleration. That is more meaningful compared to PGA. For past earthquakes, we can calculate the spectral acceleration for different possible single degree of freedom systems against one particular, you can say, ground motion. So if this is our acceleration, ground acceleration vector, what we can do is that we can construct different single degree of freedom systems having different time periods, let's say 0.5 second, 1 second, 2 second, and we conduct the actual dynamic analysis for that particular single degree of freedom system against this earthquake. And every time we do this process, we can pick the peak number, for example the peak displacement for each case, and we can construct a new curve on which we have the peak displacement on y-axis for that particular earthquake and the time period of the structure on x-axis. So for example, for t equal to 0.5 second, the peak number is 2.48 inch, the peak value of displacement which is achieved for this time period. So we will have 0.5 second here and we will have 2.48 inch of displacement. Similarly, for 1 second we will get another point. So if we perform enough single degree of freedom system analysis repeatedly, we can construct this curve, and that curve is called the response spectrum. In this case, it is the displacement response spectrum. But we can also plot the velocity and acceleration response spectrum also, because we can perform the dynamic analysis of single degree of freedom systems with different time periods, and every time we pick the, let's say, peak velocity and plot the peak velocity on y-axis and time period on x-axis to calculate what we call as the velocity response spectrum. And also we can also repeat the same thing for the acceleration, the response acceleration. In that case it will be the response spectrum, acceleration response spectrum. The values on this acceleration response spectrum will be called as the spectral acceleration values. Similarly, here we have spectral velocity, and for displacement we will have spectral displacement. So now these three curves, these three new response spectra, are the representation of the same earthquake, this one on top, which we just convert into three other forms. And these three forms are spectral displacement, spectral velocity, and spectral acceleration. And they are not fixed numbers, they are basically the functions of time period of the single degree of freedom system, which is representing different buildings or different structures. So now these three represent the same earthquake, but in a more meaningful manner. The original earthquake on top is showing you how the earth moved, and you can pick the peak value, and that will be your PGA. But these three graphs are actually giving you the response of all possible buildings or structures with different time periods. The peak value of displacement, velocity, and acceleration response is directly available from these curves. More importantly, we will have this spectral acceleration versus time period curve, which is the acceleration response spectrum. Acceleration response spectrum. The values of spectral acceleration depend on the time period of the structure. So now the idea is that we can carry out the probabilistic seismic hazard assessment not only for PGA but for all spectral acceleration values at different time periods also. Because if we remember that the actual ground motion prediction equation is not only for PGA, it is for PGA as well as for all spectral acceleration at different time periods also. So we can perform the PSHA process for PGA value, and then we can construct this hazard curve for our site as the function of PGA value on x-axis. But we can also have the same process and come up with the hazard curve corresponding to spectral acceleration at any particular time period. So this is spectral acceleration at 0.2 second, for example. This number is now considered as the hazard parameter in the PSHA process, and a new hazard curve can be obtained. Obviously, it will be different from the actual PGA hazard curve. Similarly, we can also repeat the process to come up with the spectral acceleration at any other time period, 1 second for example, and this, considering this as our hazard parameter or ground motion parameter, we can come up with the hazard curve for our you can say for our site. So the summary is that the PSHA can be performed for spectral acceleration also at different time periods of the structures. So in this figure here you can see the ground motion prediction equation for different magnitudes is shown here, but it is not just one PGA ground motion prediction equation. We will also have the spectral acceleration for different time periods as the hazard parameter, and there will be different GMPs corresponding to that. So this is for 0.3 second, spectral acceleration at 0.3 second. This is spectral acceleration at 3 second. So the hazard parameter can be spectral acceleration also, but at a fixed time period. So for different time periods we will have different, you can say, GMPs, and those GMPs can be used to come up with the hazard curves corresponding to different spectral accelerations with different time periods. So here you can see the coefficients of the ground motion prediction equation. The C1 up to C14 for a particular GMPE from this reference. You can see here that these coefficients are for PGA value, but also for spectral acceleration at different time periods. So these values are spectral acceleration for different time periods. So which means that you can construct the hazard curve using the same procedure, using the same GMPE, with different coefficients to come up with the hazard curve corresponding to different spectral accelerations at different time periods basically. So if for example we have the hazard curve for a particular site, the hazard curve for PGA, the hazard curve for spectral acceleration at 0.2 second, the hazard curve for spectral acceleration at let's say 1 second and 2 second and 3 second, if we can repeat the process to come up with all the hazard curves for the same site, what we can do then is that we can fix a definition of hazard, for example 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years. Corresponding to that hazard definition, we can pick all of these acceleration values: PGA value, spectral acceleration at 0.2 second, spectral acceleration at 1 second, 2 second, 3 second. For the same definition, let's say 10% probability of exceedance, this blue dot, on all of the curves corresponding to the blue dot, we can pick the acceleration value, PGA also and spectral acceleration at different time periods also. And using that data, we can construct the acceleration response spectrum also. And that acceleration response spectrum will be the product of your PSHA procedure, and not just like the one which you see in the last slide, that for a given earthquake you can repeatedly perform the analysis to come up with the response spectrum, acceleration response spectrum for example. That process you can do for a past earthquake which is known already. The actual history of an earthquake is available, so you can perform that analysis. But this response spectrum which you will construct using this procedure, that you will carry out the PSHA and hazard curve for all of the PGA and spectral acceleration values, and ultimately you take the time period on x-axis, and corresponding to the same hazard definition you plot them. So PGA is basically the starting point of the response spectrum. You can say it is a kind of a response acceleration of an infinitely rigid structure which is just, you can say, situated on ground. So this starting point basically will be your this number. So this number is basically your starting point. Then at 0.2 second, corresponding to this 0.2 second, you again pick corresponding to the same hazard level, DBE level. This is the DBE level. You go and then pick this number, and this will be your this point or this level of the spectral acceleration. Similarly, for 0.5 second, 1 second, for different time periods, spectral accelerations can be picked corresponding to a fixed definition of hazard, let's say DBE level, and you can join all those points to construct the response spectrum, the acceleration response spectrum for this DBE level. This is also sometimes called as the uniform hazard spectrum or UHS, because all of the values on that curve is basically corresponding to one fixed definition of hazard, and they are picked basically from the different hazard curves corresponding to one definition of hazard, and that is DBE level. So this is the uniform hazard spectrum for DBE level. Similarly, you can change your definition of hazard, let's say MCE level, this 2% probability of exceedance in 50 years. So corresponding to MCE level, you can also repeat the process and construct what we call as the UHS for MCE level. And obviously it will be higher compared to DBE level, because MCE level values will be far higher than the DBE level. On average, you can say that MCE level is around 1.5 times of the DBE level, roughly around 1.5 times. So this uniform hazard spectrum can be used for the design of structures against future earthquake. These two spectra basically represents the level of seismicity or expected you can say ground motions at your particular site in future. So the concept of spectral acceleration is used now not for the existing or past recorded earthquake, but for future earthquake. So these are the spectral acceleration values, these points on that curve. These are expected spectral accelerations at your particular site corresponding to one fixed definition of hazard, which is MCE on the right and DBE on the left. So now you can also construct the acceleration response spectrum for the purpose of design against future earthquakes. So these spectra represents the level of seismic hazard which is caused by future earthquake. So sometimes for simple seismic analysis procedures, for example the equivalent static force procedure, different building codes they fix the definition of spectral acceleration and that definition is basically used as the hazard parameter to calculate the effective earthquake forces. So for example, two numbers or two spectral accelerations on that response spectrum acceleration or UHS spectrum, they are fixed for the use of representing the level of seismic hazard in different building codes. And these two numbers are the SS, short period spectral acceleration, and it is defined as the spectral acceleration at 0.2 second of time period. So which means that corresponding to t equal to 0.2, this number on the UHS is basically defined as the SS. And similarly this should be long period basically. So there is another hazard parameter S1 which is the long period spectral acceleration, and it is represented as S1, defined as the spectral acceleration at 1 second time period. So these two numbers combinedly they represent the seismic hazard level for the purpose of simple seismic analysis procedure, for example the equivalent static analysis procedure. So previously we were having the P ground acceleration as our primary hazard parameter, but now in the new analysis procedures, for example starting from IBC 2000 onwards, different building codes they just use the SS and S1, or in fact the spectral acceleration values at these two time periods as the standard representation of the seismic hazard at a particular site. So the earthquake forces, the base shear and the effective earthquake forces, in fact they are now calculated as the function of the SS and S1 and not as the function of PGA or the zone which is defined based on PGA. So in different building codes they are defined at MCE level. So this is by default MCE level. So we assume that if we have the MC level spectrum, these 2 points on that spectrum are the SS and S1 values, and they will be used for the purpose of calculating the effective earthquake forces or base shear in the equivalent static procedure according to some latest codes. So for example here you can see this is the hazard map of US and it's taken from IBC, and you can see here that this is the MCE level values, ground motions, and they are not PGA values now, they are the spectral acceleration at 0.2 second. So they are basically SS values. So now we don't have the PGA map as the hazard map in our building codes, we have the SS map and also we have the S1 map. So I will show you the S1 map in next slide. So you can see here all of these values are still acceleration values, but they are not now the peak ground accelerations, they are the short period spectral accelerations or spectral acceleration at 0.2 seconds. Similarly this is S1 map. So you can see this is the MCE level map corresponding to 2% probability of exceedance in 50 years. But now the hazard parameter is not PGA, but hazard parameter is S1, 1 second spectral response acceleration, and the 5% critical damping is fixed, considered as the standard in different building codes. An example from Pakistan, here you can see this is the map corresponding to 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years. So this is DBE level, this is not MCE level, DBE level, but this is for spectral acceleration at 0.2 second. So this is basically SS map. All of these values are SS values, the color shows the values. Similarly this one is the same SS map, but now it is corresponding to MCE level. So 2% probability of exceedance in 50 years, so this is MCE level and this is SS map for Pakistan. So now the values are higher because MC level, as I have said, is on average 1.5 times higher than the DBE level. So this SS is defined for MC level by default. So in fact this map should be used for the purpose of having the SS value for seismic design and evaluation of existing buildings, for example. This is the S1 map corresponding to DBE level, 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years, and it is calculated using the same procedure which I have been explaining from last 2 or 3 sessions. This is for the same S1 map but now for MCE level. So MCE level S1 map, you can see again the values are, the legends are kept same, so you can relate the values. This is S1 for DBE level. The values are, the maximum value is maybe in the range of 0.3 to 0.4, but here for the MCE level S1 the values can go as far as, for example, 0.5 to 0.7. So another important topic in this session is the de-aggregation of seismic hazard. First I will explain what it actually means, and then I will show you some examples of the de-aggregation of hazard. The hazard curve basically gives us the combined effect of all the seismic sources, all the magnitudes and distances on the probability of exceeding a given ground motion level. So if you are having a hazard curve, for example this, and you have this, let's say 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years, and corresponding to that if you have a PGA value of 0.2 G, for example. So now this 0.2 G is a combined result of all seismic sources and all magnitudes and distances, which can contribute towards the seismic hazard at my site. So my site is located here, and there can be different seismic sources, and each is going to affect the seismic hazard at my site. This 0.2 G is the combined effect of all the sources. Since all of the sources, magnitudes and distances are mixed together, it is difficult to get an intuitive understanding of what is controlling the hazard from the hazard curve by itself. So if you are, for example, interested in understanding the composition of this 0.2 G, that from which specific fault or seismic source the maximum contribution is coming from to this 0.2 G, the process of actually decomposing this 0.2 G is the de-aggregation of seismic hazard. So if you want an insight into what events are the most important for the hazard at a given ground motion level, the hazard curve is broken down into its contributions from different earthquake scenarios. Because this 0.2 G now is a result of many earthquake scenarios. For example, magnitude 6 at this distance, magnitude 7 at this distance, similarly magnitude 5 at this distance. So all of the earthquake scenarios are combined in a probabilistic framework to calculate this 0.2 G as part of the PSHA process. But we can decompose to actually come up with those contributing MR pairs or magnitude and source to site distance pairs which have the maximum contribution towards this hazard at my site, which is 0.2 G, let's say. So this process, basically this process of breaking down the hazard curve into different contributions of different earthquake scenarios, that process is called the de-aggregation of hazard. So one way you can get the contributions of different seismic sources towards your final hazard at your site is to plot the hazard curve for different seismic sources separately, and then also plot the combined hazard curve. So as you can see here, let's say that these two dotted lines are the individual hazard curves which are coming from two different sources. And let's assume that this solid line is the total hazard curve, which is the combined curve from these two sources together. So for different PGA values, for different ranges of PGA, you can actually tell that which seismic source is governing the hazard at your site. So for example, here you can say that for PGA less than 0.2 G, the seismic source number 1, which is this one, is giving you a less value or less contribution towards your site compared to this second seismic source, which is, let's say, number 2 here. But for higher values of PGA, you can see here that one have increased, or it is a higher value of the annual frequency of exceedance compared to the seismic source 2. So in higher PGA values in this range, the seismic source 1 will have more contribution. So this kind of a decomposition or the relative contributions of different seismic sources can be seen if you plot the hazard curve for each seismic source separately. Here also another example, the solid line is the total hazard and all the dotted lines are the hazard from individual seismic sources. So all of these lines are the individual seismic sources, individual faults or individual area sources maybe, but the solid line is the total curve. So you can see here that this one, the curve which has the highest annual frequency, that is mostly governing the seismic hazard at this site for a reasonable range of you can say PGA values. This is for PGA, but this one is the spectral acceleration at, let's say, 0.3 second. The same information can be seen here, that the contribution of each of the faults towards the final hazard value can be quantified if you are given with this kind of a individual hazard curves for different sources. An example from Pakistan, here you can see this is the annual frequency of exceedance versus PGA. This is the hazard curve for the capital city Islamabad, and these are the individual seismic sources. Background seismicity, shallow one, which is 25 kilometer deep, 50 kilometer, 100 kilometer and 250 kilometer. So all of these lines are the background seismicity, which means the area sources, and the blue line is the crustal faults, and similarly this line is for the subduction zone. So you can see here for Islamabad, most of the contribution is coming from BG25 and BG50, these two area sources, because they have the highest you can say annual frequency of exceedance for different PGA values. Crustal faults have a lower value, lower contribution, and similarly deeper seismicity have also a lower contribution. This left side is for PGA. This is for spectral acceleration at 0.2 second, basically SS. So you can also see here that the same two sources, the individual hazard curve is higher and it is more close to the total hazard curve. This black line is the total hazard curve. So these two sources are contributing the most. So this information can be obtained if we can have the separate hazard curves for each of the source. But there is another representation in which we can actually decompose the seismic hazard, or we can perform the seismic hazard deaggregation analysis to calculate or come up with that representation of the decomposition of hazard. And that is to have a three-dimensional graph between magnitude, the distance and the epsilon value. This factor basically represents the uncertainty in the use of ground motion prediction equations. So for example, if we have the hazard curve and let's say we use the example for PGA case, so this black line is for PGA and corresponding to DBE definition, we have this point on the hazard curve. Now this number will give us some value, some spectral acceleration value or PGA value, but that value can be decomposed further to calculate actually or to estimate that what MR pairs or magnitude or distance scenarios of earthquakes are contributing the most in that final number which we pick from this hazard curve. So the three-dimensional representation of this decomposition is like this, that on one horizontal axis you have magnitude 5, 6, 7, 8, and on the other horizontal axis you have distance from source. So if you have this site, for example, this is your site, different seismic sources will be located at different distances and different magnitudes, earthquake magnitudes at those faults or sources will affect the seismic hazard at your site. So now you have an magnitude and distance space. This whole floor is basically MR, you can say MR floor or MR area or plane, in which each of the point on this plane is a magnitude and distance pair, is basically representing an earthquake scenario. And on y-axis, the height of each of the point on this plane is the percentage contribution to the hazard. So which means that whatever point will have the highest value in y-axis, that will be basically contributing, that MR pair will be contributing the most towards your this number, which is the seismic hazard which you picked from the hazard curve. So if you know the most contributing magnitude and distance pair, which means that you can identify that most contributing fault line or a particular area source which is contributing the most, and that information can be used in many ways. For example, one of the ways is that you can, when you have to actually select the past earthquake records for the purpose of dynamic analysis of your buildings, then you can actually focus more on the most contributing fault and its faulting mechanism to select the most representative future earthquake for your site for the purpose of dynamic analysis of a new building, or for the purpose of you can say performance assessment of an existing building. So this information of the decomposition or the most contributing MR pair is very useful, and that will be obtained from the results of what we call as the seismic hazard deaggregation analysis. So currently we will not go into detail of this process. I will just quickly show you some of the example results, how the results may look if you actually perform that analysis. So you will get an information that okay, from that number which is, let's say, 0.2 G, 70% of that number is basically coming from the source number 1 corresponding to this MR pair. 20% is coming from another one, and 10% is coming from another one. This kind of information is very useful, and that will be the result of your deaggregation analysis. Another representation of the decomposition of seismic hazard is this one, which is called the geographic deaggregation, in which you have, instead of having the, you can say, magnitude and R plane on, you can say, on a 3D graph, instead of having that, now you have the actual map. So on map, all of the locations are already, you can say, they are geographically mapped, so there is no need of having this R value. Whatever the actual value will be from that particular site, you can actually plot that on the map itself. The color of the tower here on the actual map is the magnitude, and the height is representing the contribution of that MR pair to your site. So this example is for one particular site, and for SS value, which was 0.356 G, it is in US. And this map, this deaggregation map, is actually telling you that what are those most contributing MR scenarios which are contributing to this 0.356 G at your site. So the highest peak will be basically contributing the most, and the magnitude corresponding to that, and the distance from the site, which can be directly taken from the map itself, will be available. So the MR, you can say the MR scenario which is contributing the most can be identified in this representation also. Here you can see another example. This is for S1, and now you can see that now we have for this particular site on the map, all of these you can say bars or towers, color of these towers is representing the magnitude, and their distance is already graphically shown on the map. But one observation you can have here is that for S1 you have these three you can say bars or towers which are located far off from the actual site, and the color of these far off towers is corresponding to a high magnitude. So which means that at this particular site you have The most contribution from the moderate to high earthquakes which can occur close to the site, and also the contribution is also high for high magnitude earthquakes which are occurring at far off place from the actual site. So this geographic de-aggregation information is very useful in actually understanding the controlling seismic sources or MR pairs at your particular site. So this is the example for Pakistan. This is taken from this study, and you can see here that for Islamabad the seismic de-aggregation is performed. The left side is the M, R and epsilon de-aggregation, that 3D graph which I just explained, and on the right hand side you have the geographic de-aggregation for the capital city Islamabad. So you can see here that this is the distance, closest distance, this is the magnitude, and the contribution, percent contribution to the hazard is on the y-axis. So based on these columns, you can identify the mean RM, and also the modal RM, and that information can be used in many ways, and one of them is to use them for the purpose of the selection of ground motions or identifying the right ground motions for the purpose of dynamic analysis at this particular site. This is the same information, but now it is in the form of geographic de-aggregation, and this corresponds to PGA value at dBE level. And now the color is showing you the magnitude, the height of the bar is showing you the percentage contribution, and you can see here that in general, as you go away from the site, from this site which is Islamabad, the percentage contribution is decreasing. So which means that this particular site actually the most hazard is contributing by this color magnitude corresponding to somewhere here, and which is lying very close to the actual site. So we know already that there are several active faults which actually lie at very close to this particular site, and therefore they may be contributing towards the seismic hazard at that site. So some tabular values for the same seismic de-aggregation analysis. In this particular study, for different cities of Pakistan, the mean and modal MR scenarios are identified for PGA values as well as for spectral acceleration at 0.2 second, 1 second and 2 second. This table is for 10% probability of exceedance in 50 years. We also have for 2%. So for different levels of seismic hazard definitions, we can also perform this de-aggregation analysis to identify what are the most contributing magnitude and distance pairs at our site. So this is the contribution from individual seismic sources for the case of Islamabad, and this is for dBE level. So you can see here that 92% contribution for this particular site is coming from the shallow seismicity, and the M and R pair is corresponding to these values 6.32 and 29.9. This is the most contributing M and R scenario for this particular site at dBE level and for PGA. For 0.2 second spectral acceleration and for MCE level also we will have these information if we perform the seismic de-aggregation analysis. So this is just an introduction, a quick introduction. The actual process we will explain that in separate video, but this is just to introduce the concept of the decomposition of hazard. So this is for 1 second spectral acceleration, 2 second, and for dBE level. Same process can be repeated for MCE level also, and you will get the most contributing faults for each case. So all of these individual seismic sources, their percentage contribution can be quantified for different sites and for different definitions of hazard and for different ground motion parameters also, PGA and SA, etc. So I will end this session here, and I will see you in some next topic. Till then, stay safe and thank you.